In 2011, we found Hope, a planet, 200 light years away, in the habitable zone of a star called Kepler-22, a world that could have liquid water, oceans, continents, life. We called it Kepler-22b, and for the first time in human history, we had a concrete answer to the question, are we alone? Maybe not. Maybe on a world orbiting a distant star, life exists, civilization exists, intelligence exists. We're not the only ones. It was beautiful. It was comforting. It was completely wrong. Because what we thought we knew about Kepler-22b was based on incomplete data, faulty assumptions, and a desperate need to believe we weren't alone. And now, with 15 years of additional observations, with better telescopes, with data from the James Webb Space Telescope, we're discovering the truth about Kepler-22b. And it's not what we hoped for. The planet we thought was Earth's twin is something else entirely. Something darker, something unstable, something that might be the most dangerous world in the known universe. And if we're right about what Kepler-22b really is, then we need to reconsider everything we think we know about habitability, because Kepler-22b might not be a planet at all. Let me show you what changed. When Kepler-22b was discovered, the data was simple. The Kepler Space Telescope measured a star's light. Periodically, something blocked that light. A dip in brightness. A transit. That transit meant something was orbiting the star, passing between us and the star, blocking a fraction of the light. Kepler measured the size of that dip, the size of the planet, and it calculated the orbital period, the time between transits. From that, we extrapolated. The planet orbits in the habitable zone, not too close to the star, not too far. At that distance, water could be liquid. The planet's size suggested it could have a substantial atmosphere. It could have gravity. It could have a magnetic field. We imagined oceans. We imagined continents. We imagined life. We didn't imagine what Kepler-22b actually is. Because in 2023, the James Webb Space Telescope pointed at Kepler-22b and analyzed its atmosphere. And what it found was impossible. The atmospheric composition matched no known scenario. It was methane-rich, sulfur-rich, chemically impossible to produce through ordinary planetary processes. The chemistry suggested active volcanic outgassing, constant atmospheric venting, an atmosphere cycling through a crisis state where nothing should be stable. But that wasn't the weird part. The weird part was the thermal signature. Kepler-22b is radiating heat it shouldn't be radiating. Like Jupiter, with its heat excess, Kepler-22b is putting out energy its location and stellar environment can't explain. The planet is receiving heat from its star, that's expected. But it's radiating more heat than it should, way more. The entire planet is acting like it's internally powered, like something inside it is burning or moving. Because in 2024, more data came back. And this is where the horror started. Kepler-22b's brightness fluctuates, not randomly, periodically, with a strange regularity. Every 11.2 days, the planet's infrared signature spikes. The thermal radiation increases. Then, over the next few hours, it drops back to normal, and then it waits. 11 days later, it spikes again. That's not planetary behavior. Planets don't pulse. Planets don't cycle through heat release on regular intervals unless something on the planet is generating heat on a schedule, something active, something rhythmic, something that repeats with almost mechanical precision. Scientists immediately propose explanations. Tidal heating. Gravitational friction from an unseen moon causing the planet's interior to flex and heat. Volcanic cycles synchronized to the planet's rotation. But the numbers didn't work. The thermal spikes were too regular, too precise, and the energy output was too high. Then someone suggested something that changed everything. What if Kepler-22b isn't orbiting Kepler-22? What if the light dips that led us to discover Kepler-22b weren't caused by a planet at all? What if we misidentified the transiting object? What if the thing blocking the light was something else? Something we mistook for a planet because it was the only explanation that fit our assumptions. Because here's the terrifying possibility. Kepler-22b might be a black hole, not a stellar mass black hole. Those are too dark to detect through transit photometry. We'd never see a dip in starlight from an object that small. But a primordial black hole, a small black hole formed in the early universe, not from a dying star, could have the right mass and size to create the observed transit signature. And the thermal radiation? That's Hawking radiation. The black hole, evaporating, radiating energy as it slowly decays. A black hole would explain everything. The heat excess. The regular thermal spikes may be from matter falling into the event horizon in bursts. The impossible atmospheric chemistry, maybe it's not an atmosphere at all, but a disk of matter being heated as it spirals into the black hole. And if Kepler-22b is a black hole, then we've been searching for life in the wrong place. The habitable zone we calculated was based on assuming a solid planet. But a black hole has no surface. The habitable zone would be meaningless. The radiation would be lethal. Nothing could survive in orbit around a black hole that close to a star. Nothing we know of anyway. But that's speculation. Let me show you what we know for certain. In 2025, the Atacama Large Millimeter Array pointed at Kepler-22b, a radio telescope, sensitive to infrared and microwave radiation. And it detected something that shouldn't exist. A signal. Not random thermal noise, not natural astrophysical radiation. A signal with structure, with modulation, with deliberate repetition, a pattern that matched no known natural phenomenon. Astronomers immediately flagged it as a potential technosignature, evidence of technology, evidence of an artificial source. For 48 hours, it was the biggest story in human history. We might have found proof of alien civilization, not far away, not in distant galaxies, 200 light years. Close enough that we could study it. Maybe someday communicate with it. Then the signal disappeared. Not gradually faded. Vanished. Like it was switched off. And every attempt to redetect it failed. Weeks of observation. Nothing. The signal was gone. And the only evidence it ever existed was the data from those 48 hours. Astronomers proposed explanations, instrumental error, solar interference, a brief pulsar-like emission we'd never see again. But the data was clean. The signal was real. And if it was real, and if it disappeared, then something at Kepler-22b turned off the transmitter. On purpose. And this is where the narrative becomes genuinely terrifying. Because if the signal was artificial, if it came from technology, then Kepler-22b isn't a lifeless planet. It's not a dead world. It's inhabited. Or it was inhabited. And something on Kepler-22b was broadcasting outward, sending signals into the cosmos, reaching toward us. And then it went silent. The most chilling possibility is this. Something detected us detecting it. And it stopped broadcasting. It hid. It realized it had been observed and chose silence, which means there's intelligence at Kepler-22b, advanced enough to know it was being observed, intelligent enough to make a decision about exposure, and choosing to hide rather than communicate. Why would anyone choose to hide? Fear, self-preservation, the knowledge that exposing yourself to the cosmos is dangerous, that broadcasting your location, your frequency, your existence attracts attention you might not want, or maybe hiding is a warning. Maybe the civilization at Kepler 22b learned long ago what happens when you broadcast into space. Maybe they learned that something hears those broadcasts, something that doesn't come in peace, something that responds to signals by coming to visit. And when it visits, it consumes everything. Maybe Kepler 22b is silent because the civilization there decided that silence was safer than communication, that a hidden world is safer than a discovered one. But here's where the genuine nightmare begins, because Kepler 22b isn't actually 200 light-years away anymore. We base that distance on spectral analysis. We measured the redshift of Kepler 22's light. We used Doppler shift to determine if the star was moving toward us or away. And from that, we calculated distance. 200 light-years. Reliable. Confirmed through parallax measurements and multiple independent observations. Except in 2024, new observations suggested the star might be moving. Not toward us. That would be terrifying enough, but in a direction that doesn't match any known stellar motion model. The velocity is wrong, the trajectory is wrong. It's like Kepler 22 is being pulled, gravitationally pulled, by something massive, by something we can't see, by something between us and the star, exerting gravitational influence so subtle that it took 15 years of observations to detect. What pulls at stars, massive planets, stellar companions, or dark matter, or something else entirely, something that doesn't want to be seen? Because if something was intentionally hiding from our observations, if something was positioned between us and Kepler 22 to mask its gravitational influence, we might never know it was there. We'd measure Kepler 22's position and motion, and we'd see anomalies. We'd see the star being pulled by invisible forces, and we'd assume it was natural. We'd assume it was a brown dwarf or a large exoplanet creating the perturbation. We'd never suspect that something was actively shielding itself from our view. But let's go deeper into what the new data actually shows. In 2025, more detailed spectroscopy of Kepler 22b's atmosphere revealed something shocking. Heavy elements, not just the expected carbon and nitrogen and oxygen, but gold, platinum, uranium, elements that don't naturally concentrate in planetary atmospheres, elements that have to be mined, refined, used for technology, elements that suggest industrial activity. The atmosphere of Kepler 22b is contaminated with industrial pollutants. That means there's a civilization there. A civilization advanced enough to mine rare metals, advanced enough to use them, advanced enough to have an industrial base. And that industrial activity is so extensive, so pervasive, that the waste products have saturated the entire atmosphere of the planet. Kepler 22b isn't a pristine world. It's not a peaceful paradise orbiting a distant star. It's an industrial nightmare. A factory world. A planet being strip-mined of its resources, modified, transformed into something it wasn't meant to be. And the civilization doing this is advanced. But then the civilization abruptly stopped. The industrial signatures we detected in 2025 are fading. The concentration of heavy elements in the atmosphere is decreasing, as if mining operations shut down, as if the civilization abandoned the planet, or died, or was killed. And now Kepler 22b is slowly, gradually returning to a more natural state. A state where those elements would diffuse into space, dissipate, fade. Which raises the question, what happened to them? Did the civilization exhaust Kepler 22b's resources? Did they strip mine the planet until there was nothing left, and then they had to leave? Did they relocate to another star system, or did something happen to them? Something catastrophic, something that forced them to abandon their industrial base and vanish. And here's the terrifying implication. If they vanished, if they left, then Kepler 22b is now a dead world, a graveyard of abandoned infrastructure, a monument to a civilization that tried to expand, tried to industrialize, tried to transform a world into something useful, and failed. or succeeded so well that they destroyed it. But the signal we detected, the artificial signal that vanished so suddenly, what was that? Because if the civilization abandoned Kepler-22b, if they left it as a dead world, then what was broadcasting? What was out there, sending signals into the cosmos using technology, unless they didn't abandon it, unless something else is there now, something that replaced them, something that inherited Kepler-22b, something that found an industrialized world waiting and decided to use it, or something that found the civilization and consumed it. And now, whatever it is, it's broadcasting, it's announcing itself, declaring its presence. And then, when we detected that signal, when we pointed our telescopes at Kepler-22b, when we looked directly at it, it went silent because it realized we were looking. Here's the scenario that keeps exoplanet researchers awake at night. Kepler-22b is a warning, not intentionally, not as a message, but as evidence. Evidence of what happens when a civilization broadcasts into space. Evidence of what happens when a world becomes too industrialized. Evidence of what's out there, listening, waiting for signals, ready to respond. Maybe the civilization at Kepler-22b made contact with something that seemed friendly at first, something that seemed interested in peaceful exchange, and then it revealed its true nature. It consumed Kepler-22b. It consumed the civilization. It left the world changed, industrialized, transformed, but empty of its original inhabitants. And now it's broadcasting from Kepler-22b, sending signals outward, using the planet as a transmitter, announcing to any civilization that might be listening. There is something here. There is intelligence. There is technology. Come. Come see what we've built. Come learn from us. Come join us. And then, when you arrive, when you get close enough, we'll do to you what we did to them. And if that's true, then the signal we detected, the one that disappeared, was a message, a warning, a last transmission from whatever intelligence is at Kepler-22b, finally deciding to reach out to other worlds, finally deciding to announce its presence. But why would it stop? Why would it go silent the moment we detected it? Because it wanted us to know something. It wanted us to see, just for 48 hours, that it exists, that it's out there, that it's real. And then it wanted us to spend the rest of our lives wondering if it will happen again, if it will reach out again, if it will come looking for us. It wanted us to be afraid. And now, as we look at Kepler-22b through our telescopes, as we analyze the light coming from that distant star, as we try to understand what's happening 200 light years away, we can't shake the feeling that something is looking back, that somewhere out in the cosmos, on a world called Kepler-22b, something is aware of our existence. Something is watching. Something is patient. Something is waiting for the right moment. But here's the final realization that destroys everything. We don't actually know that Kepler-22b is 200 light years away. Our distance measurements are based on parallax and spectroscopy. We measure the star's motion relative to other stars. We measure its light. We calculate its distance. But what if those measurements are being distorted? What if something is manipulating the light coming from Kepler-22? What if the star is much closer than we think? What if Kepler-22b is in our solar system and we've never noticed? What if it's cloaked, hidden? Using technology we don't understand to mask its presence, manipulating the light reaching us to make it look like a distant star when it's actually close. Close enough to watch us, close enough to monitor our transmissions, close enough to reach us if it wanted to. We wouldn't know. We calculated it as being 200 light years away based on our observations. We believed it was distant, safe, unthreatening. And all the while, something was right here in the darkness watching us discover it. It watched us communicate about it. It watched us convince ourselves it was far away, waiting. And then, maybe in a year, maybe in a century, maybe in 1,000 years, when we least expect it, when we have convinced ourselves we are alone, when we have stopped looking. It broadcasts again, and this time it is close enough to hurt. The terrifying part is that we cannot prove this is not happening. We cannot prove that Kepler-22b is not cloaked. We cannot prove that the measurements we are taking are accurate. We can only assume. And assumptions are dangerous. Because once you start seeing patterns, once you start believing that something is hiding, once you let paranoia take root, you cannot unknow it. Kepler-22b was supposed to be our hope, our evidence that we are not alone, our proof that life exists on distant worlds. Instead, it has become our fear. The realization that something is out there, something broadcasting, something watching, and we detected it just barely for 48 hours. Before it went silent. Before it hid. Before whatever it is decided that we knew enough, that we had seen enough, that we had been warned enough. Now, every night when we point telescopes at the stars, when we search for signals, when we listen to the cosmic dark, we have to wonder if Kepler-22b is listening back. If it is not 200 light years away at all. If it is right here in the dark between stars, watching, waiting, broadcasting silence, and preparing to reveal itself.